All right. All right, so I'd like to move on into the financials and budget report. Okay. If everybody has their packet with them, if you could turn over to, let's see, your last page actually, and that's the current budget, the balance sheet. And currently the association has $134,377.81 in their operating accounts, and $324,857.92 in the reserve accounts. Okay. Now I just wanted to try to clarify something. If everybody can, if they'll take your eyes and go down to where it says net income, it's under equity. It's one of the last line items there. It says net income. And then if you follow it over, it looks like, it says that there's a negative number there on 105,658. Okay? I want to try to clarify that and explain why that is there now. The reason why it's in a negative number, the association is certainly not in the negative, but it's in a negative number because of when we've had the meeting this year. Right, so we've been running on the funds from last year because we haven't approved the budget and stuff like that. We hadn't had our annual meeting this year yet. Okay, so it's going to reflect that way. And let me see if I'm going to try and see if I can break that down for everybody. If everybody can go to page 2 real quick. And if you go down to where, this is the balance sheet that we used to create the budget. And if you go down, which is as of December 31st, because just so to explain to everybody, the budget years are calendar years for Cypress Creek. So we would use the balance sheet for the end of last year to create the budget for this year, okay? But if you'll slide your eyes down to the net income there, you'll see that there's a positive net income of $82,000+ there, all right? So what happens is your net income is basically your net income for that particular year. Right? The very next day, this is December 31st, on January 1st, 2019, that net income becomes part of your retained earnings, which is the line item right above net income. It becomes a part of that. So if you add those two together, it should equal to the retained earnings, which is the retained earnings for all time. It should equal to that for this year. And if you go back to your back page, you'll see where it says retained earnings there. That's those two numbers added together. So your retained earnings are $234,488.92. That's last year's net income and the retained earnings added together, which is, it becomes the retained earnings of this year. Okay? Now, once we start receiving funds from the billing this year, we haven't billed everybody out, we haven't sent invoices out until after this meeting. What shows as a negative income here will start reducing until it becomes eventually a positive net income again, okay? So as we receive funds in this year, we won't be working off last year's funds. It'll show that it's not so much of a negative anymore until it becomes, again, which is what it will be, a positive net income for this year. Does everybody understand that? Okay, perfect. All right, so I just wanted to try to give you an update on that. And then if everybody can turn over to their budget, which is on page 3 of the handout for the homeowners. I didn't receive it. We always ask if there's any questions, if there's any budget questions that any of the homeowners would like to have answered, like particular questions. And usually we get them something every single year, but this year we didn't get any questions. So I'm just going to give an overview of the budget. Okay, and I'm going to go from top to bottom. And I'm going to go over the things that I would think if I was a homeowner were the most significant things to talk about. And then at the end of the meeting, and if everybody could just wait till then, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about, I can answer any questions at the end of the meeting if everybody's okay, right before we close out for the day. We'll have an answer and questions at the end, an open quorum. Okay? All right. So if everybody can if they look on your budget and you look under income, and you see funds transferred from reserve. Last year, we had planned for $45,000 to be transferred from the reserve to help fund for increases from last year's budget. Okay, so what that means is that we were going to fund from the reserve, which is a general reserve there, to help offset the expenses so that there wasn't any increases in the fees. But we didn't have to do that. And we didn't have to do that because of, if you can see under income there as well, all the funds that were collected from fines, reimbursement of legal fees, interest accrued, and late fees. So all those fees that we collected help offset what we were initially going to have to take out of the reserve. So we didn't have to take it out of the reserves. All right, so that's the reason why we didn't have to do that. Now this year, we do have it set aside to put about $100,000 from the general reserve into the operating this year. And the reason for those funds is, and I'll come back to some of this, is special projects, some of the increases this year that occurred, and then also projects that we're going to try and, that we have allocated for the communities within Cypress Creek to do some improvements, and most likely improvements to their entrances and stuff like that. So that's the different communities inside Cypress Creek that we're trying to allocate some funds for that. We think that that'd be a good way to, help beautify the community, increase the value, and just help the associations in general, okay? All right, so if everybody can look under expenses. All right, so I'm going to talk about the things that there were increases for. For example, under administrative costs, there was an increase to that line item, and this is just due to extra committee meetings and supplies. And supplies increases through Cypress Creek, probably every year a little bit, because we have increasing properties that are being built. And then we receive additional fees, but there's also additional supplies that go out. We have a new community, Shade Tree Apartments is a new community, and additional homes are being built all the time. So that's the reason for some of those increases. And then right under that, under management fees, management fee increases is basically due to just the increase in property. So in other words, if you have more properties coming in and paying the fees, the management fees are also getting paid in addition. So that increases those fees. So there isn't any increase for the association. In other words, your fees increase, and so the management fees increase. It's due to the new properties that are coming online, like Shade Tree Apartments and some of the new buildings that are coming online there as well. All right, now special projects is one I wanted to talk about with everybody. If you look at special projects, there's quite a bit of an increase there, but we plan to allocate about $45,000 to help the communities within Cypress Creek with their entrances and, the projects around the entrances and stuff like that. I think that we just feel that it will help beautify the community better, like I said before, and it'll just be an improvement to Cypress Creek in general to be able to help the community. So what we're planning to do is basically, I'm going to reach out to the board members for each of the communities in Cypress Creek, like the sub-communities in Cypress Creek, and see what the boards would like to do with their entrances or some similar projects to that. And if it makes sense, go from there and help fund that a little bit. Okay? All right, so underneath that, if you can look under irrigation system, the irrigation system was an increase due to, the irrigation system has now been completed. I'm going to come back to this with more detail, but the irrigation system all throughout Cypress Creek Boulevard and all throughout Upper Creek is now completed with a new controller and all new irrigation. And so that's been completed recently, so we're going to have to fund that, and that's the reason why you see such an increase from what it was last year, because we're going to need to pay for that work that was done for the irrigation that has now been replaced. Excuse me. All right. And then under lawn service here, there's a $10,000 increase there, but that's mostly due to we're planning to mulch the islands twice a year. Not once a year, but we're going to try and mulch them twice a year. That can be expensive, but we think that that'll keep Cypress Creek looking beautiful. Okay. Is
that all the islands?
That's all of them.
Upper Creek also?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am. All right. So that should have to do with the mulching, fertilizing, and all that sort of stuff. All right. Now we had an increase in insurance, both the directors and officers and general liability, but that's just an increase from the insurance. That's a typical increase. And legal and professional was another one that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Yes, we went over budget on this line item last year, but there was a lot of legal involvement last year. We had a couple of lawsuits out, one in particular that comes to mind. I can't remember the address exactly, but it had to do with like improper sod and some other things. We actually won that lawsuit, but there was quite a bit of legal expenses that went out for that. We got a lot of that back from winning the lawsuit, and you'll see, if you look at income, you can see that under legal fee reimbursements, because once you win, we start getting fees back. And we're continuing to get more fees back on that, and we will get fees back on that. So it might look like we were over budget, but it looks like there was a lot of legal fees, but most of that we get back, okay, from the whatever the process is, whatever it is that the legal team is helping us with. So if it's enforcement or collections or whatever, a lot of that we get back, and you can see that reflected in the income in those particular line items, late fees, interest, reimbursement, and then any fees that we were getting back in collections and stuff like that too. Okay. All right. Now before I move on, I have reports of the committees for committees, but is there any questions about things on the budget or the balance or anything like that? Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to have someone professionally available to look at the entrances? Because we've lived in Oklahoma for 5 years.
Yep.
And the entrance still looks like low
Well,
income housing, in my opinion.
Sure. That's the reason why we set aside those additional funds I was just talking about. That's what I'm saying, the entrances.
Right.
So I'm going to reach out to the boards of each of the communities and talk to them and see what they'd like to have done to the entrances and similar projects, and see if we can help out with that.
But is there a plan for the whole Cypress Creek to have something so the whole place is dynamic and not one shines more than the other?
Well, we're going to get with the board and see what they want to do, and again, right. So it's going to be equal across the board what we're able to help them with. But it'll be what those associations, what they want to do. We'll see if it makes sense, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
There's a lot of competition of what's going on out there construction-wise.
Okay. All right, but yeah, we'll get with the board on that and see if we can help them with that.
Even though we have our own HOA, we were able to participate in the master for La Paloma,
You are part of the master.
but we've never been able to
No,
get funds
we never
for
got
our
any money.
Well, that's what we're saying this year.
So we are going
Yes,
to participate in.
absolutely. The sub-communities. That's what we're doing. We're trying to allocate.
It's never happened.
I know. Right. I think everybody's on board with that, but I think that's what they're saying. What the board has said now is we'd like to try to get with your board and the other boards for the community, and see if we can help out with that a little bit. So, all right. Yes, ma'am.
You keep saying entrances for the special projects, and you're wanting to increase it $30,000 when we didn't spend a dime of it last year. So to me, I would think we would only need to request another $10,000. Plus undergrounds improvement, we didn't spend a dime there. So you already have the $10,000 allocated for this money. So either are we going to roll over the excess funds? Is it going to come back to the homeowners, or are we going to maybe look at changes?
Well, we didn't increase the fees now.
I realize.
It's just all it's doing is it's what we think is about what we think we're going to need to use to allocate for those entrances for the different communities. It's already a part of it's already in your accounts. We're just allocating some of that from the general reserve to maybe help fund the beautification of I say project, but we're mainly focusing on the entrances is what we're trying to focus on and stuff like that. But so the funds are already there. We're just moving the funds to help with that expense. We don't know exactly what the cost is going to be yet, but this is sort of what we thought would probably be the fee for improving the entrances for this year. So it's already there. You know what I'm saying? So we're just allocating some of that.
Besides La Paloma, is Fairway Palms the only other one that paid for their own in the past?
What do you mean pay for their own?
Huh?
Pay for their own? What do you mean?
I mean, from their own fees and stuff.
No, I think
And Village Estate.
I think Village S,
Village Estate.
Fairway Palms, and La Paloma.
Then
Go ahead.
Tana did not, and neither did, that's my phone ignored,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Then Tana had to pay for their own, right?
Well, they don't have an own.
They don't have one, so we all paid for our own if we were in
Well,
a
that's the whole point. The point is that Ventana is Cypress Creek. right? In other words, there's no sub-association there. They don't have additional fees for a smaller HOA, so it is responsibility of Cypress Creek to maintain their entrance and monuments and stuff like that. And, but the others that have already paid for it in the past, we just thought that, we looked around and we see that some of the entrances need some work, right? And so we figured that we looked at what was in the accounts, and we figured that we could probably utilize some of those fees to help out with the entrances of all the sub-associations. Okay? That make sense?
Yeah, I guess, but
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm not against it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, we've always paid more in our fees,
Yep.
and we paid for our own entrance. So now, we're gonna get to use that, and you're gonna give us some more, equal to the.
Yeah, that's right. So we're allocating some to help out with additional projects for the entrances. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
What about the, ivy covered walls along Cypress Creek Boulevard?
Mm-hmm.
And the plants that are sick or
Yeah.
dead?